Welcome back, everyone, to the Humor Career Insights podcast, your guide to navigating career success. I'm your host, Bachechi Bafam, a certified professional career coach, human resources consultant, and founder of Humor. Whether you're just starting out or transitioning after years of service, this podcast is your go-to resource for invaluable tips and strategies. In the series, we're tapping into the power of storytelling. Join us as we meet some incredible people whom I have had the privilege to meet in this life journey. Some I have known for a lifetime and some I have just met, but all of them have stories that I know will inspire you as well. So let's get inspired. I am honored today to be joined by a wonderful human being whom I have known for many years. He's a leader in global health, food security, and humanitarian assistance. I have been witness to the wonderful work that he does and the intentional way he mentors and encourages the people that he meets along life's journey. And I'm delighted that he has taken time out of his very busy schedule to have this conversation on Humor Career Insights. A very warm welcome to you, Tawani.
Thank you, Bache.
Tawani, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
I'm Tabani Maposa. I come from a family of 10. And I have 2 children. So you can see from just that construct that I probably wanted to reduce the family pyramid a bit because coming out of a family of 10 was quite, a feat in terms of just growing up. I'm married to SCORE. And I am really guided by my faith in most of what I do. So if I were to really speak about myself, I'll say faith at the core, family next, and friends and fun.
Great. Thank you, Tawani. Can you tell us about what it is that you do as a profession, how you do it, and why you do it?
I'm a development worker. I am currently a chief country delivery officer with Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. I would say that my work is split into multiple things. One is a leader. I am a leader of teams. But 2, I am a facilitator of relationships, and I'm a broker of partnerships in delivering service to the most vulnerable in many countries. I have the fortune of working in close to 90-something countries at the moment and overseeing teams that support those. And that's an incredible platform of vaccinating half of the world's children. How I do it, I think, is obviously through teamwork, starting with my immediate team, but through partnerships, working with other organizations that value the cause and share the same goals, and through continuous learning, because there is always an opportunity to learn.
90 countries. That's a huge, huge responsibility. How do you manage the teams in so many different countries?
Well, I think the thing is how one organizes them. They're broken down into some clusters and into manageable pieces. And that allows me to have a span of control that is reasonable while empowering and trusting the leaders under me to really dive into the details, but to lean in as required and requested by those leaders.
Okay. And I want to bring out something that seems to be coming out quite a lot in your career and in your professional life, and that's relationships. You mentioned that you're a facilitator of relationships, but in your introduction as well, your introduction was heavily relationship themed. Can you tell me how your relationships with your family have supported your career success?
Well, thank you very much. I think we are social animals. as human beings, and so relationships, in a sense, really speak to the core of who we are. I've been lucky to have a wife that I have known for over 25 years, who has really been a friend and a pillar. And so when I really talk about relationships, if there is one relationship I draw mostly from, it would be that. She is the person I run to when I am frustrated, but she's also the person I run to when I have something to celebrate. So in that regard, it's been important. But as I talk about relationships, I also think about the children and getting them to understand what I do. Then I think about the friends in terms of being a sounding board of some of my thinking. But not least, remember I said at the core of it, faith really guides my work. And this network of friends and family is the one that I go to when I need prayers for discernment and for charting a path forward. And so I'm an extremely lucky guy that I have people who pray for me, around me, who pray with me, but we have also really given me the strength to take on difficult tasks, knowing that somebody has got my back and they are calling God to guide my path.
Okay, I like that. Now, this is a conversation I've had with prior guests in terms of faith in the workplace. Have you ever found it a challenge to proclaim that faith is your core in the workplace?
I will not say found it a challenge. I think what's important in the workplace is not what you speak, but what you live. And so my faith is very much spoken in subtle ways. And the subtle ways are, if I make a commitment, do I live through that commitment? Can my word be my bond? Can somebody see that I care about the person before I care about the results? So what relationships am I building with people? And even in a space of conflict, do I approach that conflict both with compassion and with a keen ear of understanding and listening to others? And so my faith is actually how I show up. It is not about me saying, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Jesus, but it is actually the actions that themselves point to whom I have believed in.
Living the word rather than speaking the word.
That's my belief. And if somebody needs us to get into the word, of course, I'll go to Matthew 6:33 and say how important and profoundly that has been in my life. I'll go to Psalms 46 verse 10 and how it has spoken to me in different seasons. But I always try to really say that let our deeds speak louder than our words do, because people are more likely to listen to any words that you have to say when your deeds have shown them that they are valued, they are seen, they are respected.
I think having witnessed the way you work over the years, I always say to people, Tabani is one of those people who is an epitome of servant leadership. He really shows the way he works rather than talks the way he works. So I just want to draw things about the importance of being surrounded by supportive people in a successful career, the importance of family to success at work that truly seems to have been critical to your career success.
Sure. You'll have to draw more. That statement probably needs to get me to one dimension that you want me to speak to. I think there's many dimensions one can speak to, but I can speak about the power of mentorship for me as Tabani. There is one leader that really has been extremely impactful to me. And that is a gentleman by the name of Walter Mickleton. He's been retired for many years, but how he saw in me potential as a young leader before I could see it in myself is something that I've learned to pay forward. Where a staff member, it doesn't have to actually come and say, I'm looking for opportunities for growth, but where I look at them and I say, what is the potential that I see that they may not have seen about themselves? And how can I affirm that so that they can step up to it?
Now, mentorship is definitely one of those things that over the conversations that I've had with my guests has come out really, really strong as something that is important in career, something that is important in the workplace, being mentored and mentoring. Now, I want to just pick your brain on women, gender parity, and mentorship, because that's a theme that I've been having with a couple of my guests. And I wanted to find out from your perspective as a senior leader in global health, how do you see women in senior leadership roles? Are they fewer, or in your view, is this a challenge, or is it just primarily a perception? And then linking it to mentorship. Do you see women being mentored or women mentoring each other in that space?
Thank you. There's a lot there. But I would say that, the data on gender 50-50 and things like that, it tells us that we are nowhere near where we should be as far as women leadership is concerned in global health and in many other areas. And if you look at some of the work or some of the op-eds that Melinda French Gates has written, it speaks very accurately to this subject. But, if we proceed at the rate that we are proceeding, it will take a whole lot many years before we really reach that space where we, as a sector, we have women at the right levels. So I think it is a deep issue and it is a deep problem. I personally always look at it from the point of both recruitment, but also the perspective of promotions in the organization. I do have a number of women leaders in my own team that were all, in fact, as a matter of fact, were all recruited by me. I happen also, Bache, to have a wife that is a gender person. And so these are conversations that we have in my house. And she really has helped me to appreciate the role that I have to play as a leader in opening up that space, the support and the mentorship that I need to play is important, and I shouldn't leave it for others to do. I think that in terms of women mentoring each other, it varies. It varies. I think they can do more. In terms of mentoring each other as well. Sometimes there's a bit of a strange psychology that places people to one man for themselves. One man is made in the image of God, proverbially there, for themselves. And sometimes in this very lonely space of leadership, people then tend to focus on on themselves and what brought them this far, and may not do that. But I've seen also a number of women strongly, really advocating for women at the table. And occasionally, I have stepped out of presentations that I should have made because there was a male panel only. The panels that we call manels, to make sure that somebody in my team would rather do that so that we project the face of our organization in a manner that recognizes that we have capacity that is beyond the male one.
Okay. Thank you. pulling you a little bit back in terms of like your mentor. You mentioned that you said, what was his name? Middleton?
Walter Middleton, yes.
Yes, Walter Middleton, who picked you up at a young age and realized your potential. How did that happen? Did he, was he the one who reached out to you? Were you the one who approached him? How did that work out? And in that, could you please also share with us your career journey, where you started and how you come to be the senior leader that you are?
Well, Walter Middleton is one of many people who have actually contributed to my career. But obviously, I say that because he picked me and put me in a role at that particular time that I felt least qualified for. I felt least qualified for, and he said, I believe in you, you can do it. And he only didn't say, I believe in you. He actually had my back right through in that situation. But Bache, last year, it was actually probably earlier this year, I wrote something about the women who had influenced me in my life on LinkedIn. You may have seen some of it. And so I really think that I'm a child of a village. I wrote about the women. I didn't write about the men. But it was because it was important to celebrate the women. At that particular time, it was an opportunity for Women's Month to really celebrate them. So my career has consistently been one where I have actually had somebody guide me and pick me. Let me begin. My first job as an analyst, I was picked by Lindiwe Majele to work for her consulting firm. You know, that's a woman there that gave me that first opportunity while I was at university, while I wasn't sure whether my analytics made sense or didn't. And she gave me that opportunity and we worked together there. My second job as a teaching assistant and eventually as a lecturer, Dr. Flora Mhlanga, formerly Ngwerume, met me at the UZ lawn and they said, hey, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'll come to collect my results. Said, can you come see me in my office tomorrow? And then after that, I got into academia. There is a woman, never applied for that job. And she called me in and had a conversation. And that was the next thing. While I was a lecturer at UZ and I was busy working with my things, the UZ was on strike. And I had an opportunity to do some baseline surveys. It was during a drought at that particular time. And then there I met this woman, Jemo Hadl, a Canadian woman. And she said, hey, you really helped us in this particular situation. Would you get somebody for us in the M&E role? And I said, I'll get somebody. I went and I looked for friends. Nobody wanted to move to Bulawayo because Harare was the heartbeat. That's where things happen. And I was a lecturer as well by that time. And so there was a question of why would I go to an NGO? And my father really thought that would be a bad idea anyway. He thought you're a lecturer, your career is going somewhere. Why would you get out? We discussed it with my wife, and eventually when she came twice and couldn't get somebody, then I went. And now this is the third job that I didn't apply for, that I went to. And then when I went into World Vision as a monitoring and evaluation officer, then subsequently manager, then the next thing I was, Jemo moved on to the tsunami in Asia, and said, hey, there's an opportunity here. Would you want to join us? And then that's how I moved to Thailand during the tsunami in an M&E role. Then after that, another gentleman that I had met while in Bangkok, Bob Beck, also asked me, hey, we have a specialist role in Johannesburg. Would you like to come for it? Then I went for that role as a food programming specialist. But all I'm saying here, Bache, is that I've had an incredible career where up to this day, Bache, I have not applied for a single job.
Wow.
That is the uniqueness of my career, that I have not. Today, I hold a title of Chief Country Delivery Officer. I did not apply. I have not applied for a job. I have been invited. But now, with all that career, all I'm arguing as a long and short is that you must show up the best way you can where you are planted. And people will see a flower that is blooming, and they will see a flower that is ready for harvest, and they will harvest. Of course, there is a different strategy, which is you must speak for yourself. You must project yourself. My journey has been different, and I wouldn't want to say that it is the only route, but my route has been doing the best I can where I've been trusted. And letting the next opportunity find me while I'm doing the best I can to the best of my ability.
That is impressive, Tawani. Well, what you're doing now is an interview. So, so let's say this is probably one of the only interviews you've had.
I hear you.
So, can we talk about some of those pivotal moments that led you to global health work?
Well, I think, Bache, you may know that by training, I'm an animal scientist. And as an animal scientist, I learned microbiology, I learned anatomy, I learned physiology. So global health was never way too far. I did biochemistry, I did immunology, there are a lot of parallels. Only that in my case, I was doing it with animals and not with human beings. But under the surface, there is a lot that is common about whether you talk about mammals, whether you talk about the circulatory system, the pulmonary system. All those things are things that in the science world, the smallest unit in science is the cell. And in that cell, there's a mitochondria, there's a DNA, and there's all these things. And so when you look at it, the transferable skills that I already had from my academic background were quite a lot. But leave the academic background alone. The leadership experience that I had gotten along the way, I believe is also part of what opened doors for me in this new world.
Okay, no, that's excellent. Animal science, was that something you wanted to do or you fell into it?
This one is a funny one. Getting into university during our time was competitive, as you know. At that particular time, what I would have probably wanted to do was medicine. But medicine was highly, highly competitive, and I didn't make the cut for that. And so then I had to make some choices of courses to make. And interestingly, I actually was considering doing crop science. And when I walked on orientation week, and I was actually saying, why was I put on animal science? I want to go to crop science. The dean of the faculty at that particular time, his name was Lindela Ndlovu, Professor Lindela Roland Ndlovu. Had a conversation, and he's late now. He was Vice Chancellor for the National University of Science and Technology. May his soul rest in peace. He said to me, animal science is so versatile. You may actually want to consider that. I considered that, I took it, and I tell you, that was a pivotal moment because he put me into a path that I've never regretted to this day. Because I don't think with crop science I would have been in public health. But with animal science, I could get in and understand the lingo and not be lost at all.
Yes. So all things happen for the good.
Completely. And when you look at it in hindsight, that's when you smile because you look at the connections. You say, my goodness, the Lord was leading all the way. And there's this common saying that there are spaces where you see two footsteps and then suddenly there is none. And you ask, what happened? Where is the other person? And says, well, I was carrying you. And I believe he's been carrying me through and through.
So, Tamani, from our conversation so far, I see you're very good at remembering names and very good at acknowledging those names. Is that something that comes naturally, or is it something you've had to learn along the way?
I think it probably speaks to my values. I'll give you a bit more here. The first one verse that I really live with, or one creed that I live with, is that to whom much has been given, much is to be expected. And then when I look at what I've been given, I think much is expected of me. Much is expected of me in terms of how I show up, in terms of excellence, but in terms of how I actually extend a hand to help others.
Yes.
So there are two G's that actually really are fascinating that I have here. The first one is I live a life of gratitude. And gratitude always points towards the giver. And so I'm grateful to God, but I'm grateful to all those people who have been instrumental in my life's journey. And so gratitude as a package is not to say, I thank somebody for giving me a job, but it's actually acknowledging that person and recognizing them for that. So it comes a bit natural because my value of gratitude is a very well developed value. I am a grateful person, and I live each day really truly with a sense of gratitude. Then the second one is generosity. I come from a chain of women that give, and they give lavishly. My mother is a giver. My grandmother is a giver. They give their time. They give. There's never a time when I visited my grandmother where she would not stress about, I'll need to give you some groundnuts or something. But I come from a tradition of women who give and who give liberally. And I then am lucky because on the paternal side, my father has looked after so many children that were not necessarily his own, but were part of the expanded family. And he always did it with joy. So gratitude and generosity are things that I probably have been raised around. And they feel effortlessly to do. It's not hard for me to be thankful, but it's not hard for me to give.
I like that, Tavani. Gratitude and giving. I really like that. And it's very inspirational to me that those are things that you grew up with. Those are values that you learned growing up. It's not something that you had to learn as an adult. So it really does come naturally and becomes part of the purpose of who you are. Now, can we talk a little bit about managing high-performing teams? I'm going to take you back to your 90 countries. I've had this question at the back of my mind, and I really do want to ask it. And it's, how do you delegate like cluster versus the delegation? You have 90 countries. How can someone in your position, if you're giving them tips, and this is the first time they're doing it, how do you delegate to those 90 countries?
I think first it's delegation is not a choice. It's a must. I would argue that if you don't delegate, you will either choke your organization or you will kill yourself in the process of trying to do everything. Neither outcome is good. It's not good for your organization. It's not good for you health-wise. And so at the heart of delegation is trusting others. But at the heart of delegation is also the ability to empower them, to give them the tools to do what they need to do. at the heart of delegation is a feedback loop where people are able to come back to you when they feel they are stuck and they need you so that you can align and help them. And the more you align, the easier it is to let them be as they go forward, because they know this is where you stand on this. And so throughout the delegation process, as you do it, there is a process of alignment. So it means that in the early phases of delegation, you spend more time aligning in terms of how you make decisions, where you are coming from, how you think, what is the strategy, what are the goals that we want to achieve, so that as you get aligned, we have to go back here, but to the greatest story of all time. And the greatest story of all time is the story of Christ and his disciples. They were of one mind and of one purpose. And if you clarify what is that one purpose and that one mind, then delegation becomes easy. But it always takes the investment and the working together in the phase of alignment. And so trust and alignment and the opportunities to build feedback loops so that we continue to align and we have continual alignment is important, important mechanisms that would help us to achieve that.
Thank you, Tabani. Now, two things from, I hear this from people, the fear of being replaced when you train, mentorship, when you mentor someone, the fear of, are they going to take my job? Is that something that's ever come to mind? Is that something you've ever come across? And what are your thoughts on that?
I have a very different perspective. And my perspective is that you must feel so proud that you have trained people that can replace you. Because the greatest failure of a leader is actually to walk out and there is nobody able to replace you. That is failure. If you can walk out as a leader and you are asked, recommend amongst your team members, and you can't even recommend one, the choice of who replaces you is one that the management that remains has and must never be taken away from them. But at least let nobody take your responsibility to leave people that are well trained, that could easily step into your shoes. And really, when people are actually at that level, it pushes you to look for the next thing. And so as we train people and as they grow under us, it actually says, well, I've done my part here. Maybe I'm ready for the next thing. So to the contrary, it really feels to me like that is a number one role of leadership, to multiply leaders. And when you have multiplied leaders, then you are actually promoted to get more responsibilities because you are a grower of people. A growth mindset looks at it that way.
Yes.
It can only be a fixed mindset that thinks that I have a territory to protect.
That is true. Tabani, you have hired, you have mentored, you have trained. How hard is it to fire a subordinate? Have you ever had to?
Well, I wouldn't have come this far and not have. I've done so many times, and there are times I've fired friends. Subordinates we had become friends because you work together and you become friends. And my wife will tell you that I have agonized and prayed a lot before taking such decisions. Because I recognize that such decisions are decisions that impact people's careers and how they view and see themselves. And so they must be taken with the greatest of care that does not destroy the person, but offers them an opportunity to learn and offers them an opportunity to grow out of that experience. But I've also never believed in firing somebody without actually trying to help them. So every time the standard is higher, before I fire somebody, how have I helped them? Because getting to that point is a point of last resort. We must figure out whether there is a way in which we can redeem the situation before we get there. But I have done it many times. And the funny part of it, Bache, is that some of those people have come back and thanked me.
Oh, they've learned something from it.
Come again.
They've learned something from it. And it's
They've
made them
learned
better.
something from it, and they've come back and said thank you. And I really think that number one, it's about how you handle people with care. You know, even when you are separating, there must never be something that loses the fact that I'm dealing with a human being who is absolutely made in the image of God.
Yes. Yes.
And even when they are failing, God still cares about them. And so let me not be an instrument of breaking a child of God. Let me be an instrument of saying, maybe you are planted in the wrong place. Can I help you to move on and look for the right place that is a fit for you?
That is really powerful, Tabani, and really resonates with me. I'm not sure if you've listened to one of my earlier podcasts where I talk about being fired. And for me, the way it was done and the way you're speaking now about how you get someone to move on, and the way it was done for me broke me. I had to get up from it, But when you let someone go with empathy and with that objective, the way you are talking now, it's like, this is just not a good fit for me. And it being recognized that it's not a good fit for me, where is my good fit? Not, I have failed, I am a failure, I cannot do anything right, but I have to find my place and my good fit. That is really powerful. Now, let's talk about something you mentioned in terms of learning. You sound like someone who likes to learn, who likes continuous development. Can you talk to us about the importance of that and how that has been pivotal in your career?
Well, look, I have had a career that has spanned from consulting private sector to academia, to humanitarian, to development, monitoring and evaluation, food security, and every time you make these switches, they humble you to that ground zero of I need to learn a new area. And sometimes you are overwhelmed by the acronyms and the new language. But that has kept me humble in terms of I don't know enough in these spaces. And so I think learning doesn't happen without humility, Bache.
Yeah.
And so for me, I argue that recognizing and accepting that we still have a lot to learn actually is really the fertile ground for learning itself. Because walking into a situation assuming I know it all is actually a sure way of creating a non-permeable a mindset around learning. So I walk around curious about what am I going to learn today? What is Bache going to teach me that is new, that I don't know? And I also ask myself, what am I learning about myself? When I actually do appraisals with staff, I normally don't focus on what was achieved. Sometimes what was achieved is important, but I always have this question, and I've had it for so many years. Tell me, in the last 6 months, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about the organization? What have you learned about the work we are doing? Where is that leading you to how you're going to approach work in the coming months? So, achievements aside, let's step a little bit out. You have delivered that beautiful thing that you have delivered, but what did it take? How did you learn? What did you learn about the interactions that you had to have around that? What did you understand about how the organization can set you up for success on things of that nature? So learning is something that I always position, whether it's in an appraisal conversation or in a self-reflective conversation. Tabani, that was a difficult conversation. What did you learn about how you showed up? how would you approach it differently next time? Bache, the moment we cease to ask ourselves questions that stop us and make us look at ourselves in the mirror with honesty, we get to a point where we have actually started limiting ourselves and our potential.
Self-awareness, being critical in everything. How do you encourage someone who feels, I may not be that self-aware? They go through these feedback sessions and they're not quite sure. What have I learned? The self-awareness is not there. How can they get to that point of being self-aware?
Emotional intelligence, and as you know, self-awareness is the lowest pillar of emotional intelligence. It's the best piece.
Yeah.
It's the best piece. And so if you don't get that right, the rest of of the emotional awareness pieces become harder to stack because there is no foundation. The way I normally try to help people is to ask questions. I always believe that as a leader, I should not tell, but I should ask. Asking always begins to get people to dig deep within themselves. And it may surface a certain element of self-awareness. And there are some people out here whose self-awareness is zero and it may never come. You can only pray for them. But most often I try to ask questions. I think one of the best lessons I have learned in leadership is that really, as best as you can and as best as you should, ask questions and tell less.
That active listening that a lot of us don't really do. We listen so that we can respond. But when you ask the question, you really want to learn. So you take time to actively listen. Thabani, what?
And you force others to reflect on those questions. And normally when people are reflecting on questions, they hopefully have an opportunity to dig deeper into themselves, because remember, we're talking about self-awareness. And hopefully what answer they produce may in part get them to reveal who they are to themselves as well.
Do you believe in, just something that's come to mind, do you believe in personality assessments? Things like the Clifton Strengths, the DISC. How good are those in helping you to become more self-aware or to know what your strengths are?
I believe in God. I believe in God, but jokes aside and humor aside, I do appreciate those assessments. The Myers-Briggs, the DISC, and the like. I do appreciate those because I have found them to be incredibly revealing on things that may sit in a blind spot. The Johara window. Things that we know about ourselves and things that we think we know but we don't know. And so I've seen that they have actually helped me to see something that was sitting on a window that was not within my scope, and it has expanded my self-awareness of myself and my personality and my preferences and my triggers as well. So the short answer is I believe they are helpful instruments. I believe that they must always be used with greatest of care. In that, the disc, for instance, is a yellow, red, blue, green. It's important for one to actually recognize that they are an opportunity for you to adjust your style.
Yeah.
And you are not tied to one. There is one that is predominantly your natural proclivity.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that you cannot learn and balance and compensate. And so it's important to use them as a tool for growth, not as a tool to define you and put you in a box.
I agree 100 with that. So many things that I want to ask you, but I think let's talk about your greatest career achievement, because you've had a really incredible career. But when you look back, what do you say that to me is my greatest achievement?
Well, when one is being asked to choose, and the person is a person who tends to be grateful for so many things, it's quite hard. But I would say that if you allow me to, one of them is really ushering the role of cash transfers into the humanitarian sector. When I wrote the concept of how cash transfers could be taken to scale and be thought of, I was lying in a hospital bed. First time I was ever in a hospital bed in my life. I had contracted dengue fever in Sri Lanka. And I flew to Johannesburg, and I was on bed rest because with dengue fever, all you can do is to rest. And I didn't know what to do while I was resting. And so I started thinking, how can we do something differently with food assistance in a manner that gives people dignity, but in a manner that doesn't always involve moving around bags that are donated, that recognizes the market forces that are at play. And that work, when I look at how that area of work has grown over the years and has become something important, and I think that it was done in a sickbed, I cannot be more prouder.
Yes, and cash transfer became a buzzword, hey? I know now.
It became a buzzword.
Yeah.
It became a buzzword. And what makes me more proud, Bache, is the fact that nobody remembers me. Nobody remembers me. Nobody remembers the role I played in advocating in Rome with WHO, WP, sorry. Nobody remembers me, in Brussels advocating with ECHO. Nobody knows me walking the halls of Congress in the United States, actually advocating for USAID to do that. Nobody remembers that. And the greatest success is when something takes a life of its own and nobody remembers you, because it truly means you have actually served in a way that was not about self, but that was truly about the industry.
Yeah. Now, my HR hat comes on and I'm like, Tabani, you were in a hospital bed. You were meant to be resting, but you were working. Which brings me to the question of, what do you do to relax? What do you do to rest? How do you balance that hard work that you do, that impactful work that you do with yourself, with your wellness?
Sure. The first thing is that I'm a lucky guy. I'm a lucky guy because I happen to be Seventh-day Adventist. And as a Seventh-day Adventist, we have a rhythm where from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, I actually switch off. That recurring rest every 7 days is very life-giving. But outside that bit, which is structured in my spiritual realm and life, I also really enjoy right now in Switzerland going to the mountains. I love driving. And my wife loves pictures. And I spend a lot of time making my wife happy by taking her pictures and her posing and making things.
I've seen some of those pictures. Sorry to interrupt. You can carry on.
Yeah. So that's the time that I spend with my wife having fun in that regard. But, I think my resting and my relaxing is really spending time with the family. And I told you I was walking at 6 a.m. today,
Yes.
at 7 degrees, and the breeze was beautiful. And that gives me the resilience that I need. So those are some of the things that I do. And when I visit my parents, I actually don't spend time in the city. I actually go to the rural areas where my phone doesn't work. And I switch off. So when I have moments of switching off, I switch off. But my energy comes from family. My energy comes from nature. My energy comes from spending time with God, and I get an opportunity to do that every 7 days, and it's beautiful.
Okay, Tabani, it's been over an hour. I appreciate you taking time out of your rest time, out of your busy time, to chat with me. But before I let you go, I would like some lessons learned from you. What advice would you give your younger self starting out in humanitarian work?
The advice I would probably give myself is to pace myself a bit, because in humanitarian work, while I've never had a burnout, I've seen many colleagues burning out, and I don't consider myself any different from them. I think I just happened to be lucky that it didn't happen, but there were times I pushed myself way too hard, and I could have paced myself a little. Just to get a bit of some breather. That would be one. Number two, I think it would be probably really the last question that you just asked me, to have more fun. To have more fun. I had fun while I was doing the work I was doing, but I could have had a little bit more, and it wouldn't have hurt at all.
Bringing just one last question before I let you go. What do you love the most about the work that you do?
I love two things. First and foremost, it's actually the communities that we serve. When you see that you have protected one more child from a disease, when you see that a family has a meal for a month when they are going through a drought and a difficult period, when you see that in a period of conflict, a family has a roof or a tent over their head, as I observed in Lebanon when the Syria crisis was happening some years back, or in South Sudan and other places, when you see some modicum of dignity being given to those who deserve it, and yet are the most vulnerable in our community, that gives me the greatest joy. Then the second one is leading teams. When you have a team that the right foundations of trust have been built, it really gives you amazing energy. And I've been lucky to have some of those teams in my career. I've had seasons where it has been hard, where you're trying to build a team, but you may have one or two team members who don't exactly see your vision as you see it, and it's work. But when they do turn around, and when I find myself in a space where we actually have the same purpose and the same mind, it gives me greatest joy, even though it may have been hard. So leadership and the mission are things that bring me the greatest joy.
Bringing something to mind, the teams that you lead, obviously multicultural, multinational, very diverse teams. Do you vary your leadership styles?
I absolutely have to, because how you show up with an introvert or people that don't challenge authority is very different with how you show up with people who challenge authority all the time, because our cultures and our diverse backgrounds get us into those realms, and you make a decision not to take it personal, but you also have to set boundaries of how we work without suppressing people, but also you've got to encourage those who may actually self-suppress as well. So it's a delicate walk, but you want everybody to thrive fully and feel they are welcome, their voice matters, and the knowledge and perspective that they bring shapes who we are as an organization and as a team.
Thank you, Tabani. And thank you once again for joining me on Humor Career Insights podcast. Any final thoughts or messages for our listeners?
Well, I think thank you, Bache, for the opportunity to talk to you today. I think it's an opportunity to reflect as well for me. It's an opportunity to learn about who I am becoming and the journey that I have traveled so far. And it's an opportunity that I don't get often. And so, again, with a heart of humility and gratitude, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. I, for one, am grateful for your giving. I learned the 2 G's today.
Thank you.
To our listeners, you've been listening to Tabani on Human Career Insights podcast with a very inspiring career story. I hope that you've been inspired as I have been. Until next time, stay inspired.